this is 11 honors, and we're doing Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. So we're down to number 6. I think we've done number 5. Who is, first of all, go back to 4. What are the contents of Jekyll's will? There's one thing in there that's shocking and surprising.
It says that if Dr. Jekyll dies or like disappears, all his stuff is Mr. Hyde.
And the thing that bothers Utterson is he doesn't know who Mr. Hyde is until he meets him, until he actually, Enfield tells him about it. So he doesn't know who Mr. Hyde is.
Harry Jekyll.
That is, Utterson doesn't know who Mr. Hyde is. So that's why when he sees that Mr. Hyde, who is he? Because Utterson knows all the friends of Jekyll. And who is this guy? He doesn't know who it is. And then when he hears about him, then he meets him, it becomes very troubling. So that's where we are in the story. That's the answer number 4. Who is Lanyon and what's his relationship with Jekyll?
Lanyon?
Yeah. Pretty sure we've read that. Yep. Remember, he goes to Lanyon immediately, and Dr. Lanyon, actually. He goes to him immediately because Lanyon and Jekyll were best friends. Yes. Did you know? Yes. Do you want to tell us who Lanyon is?
His childhood.
Okay, and what is his current relationship with Jekyll? But what about their current relationship? They have been the best friends, but not currently, which would suggest that they are on the outs with each other, which is what they are. They don't have anything to do with each other. They're not talking to each other. And the reason is, and Utterson, for some reason, was glad to hear this, it was simply professional. It wasn't about Mr. Hyde. He thought maybe Mr. Hyde had something. He thinks, as you would, see the strange name on a will that, well, first of all, he thinks it's probably, what do you call it, blackmail. That this guy, Hyde, try to maybe, he'll blame it on you and you blame it on him. So Dr., let's see, he thinks that Dr. Jekyll is being blackmailed by Mr. Hyde. Doesn't know why, but why do you blackmail people? But you have something against them. Usually it's something they don't want anybody to know about. So, they got information about the guy, they don't know, that's what he thinks. He doesn't know the facts yet, but that's what he's thinking. Are you okay?
Yeah.
We're back in school. You
Yeah.
had noticed. So that's number 5. So he thinks, going back to 4, Utterson thinks Hyde is blackmailing Jekyll. Then he finds in number 5 that Lanyon and Jekyll's problem is professional. Do you know what professional disagreement they have? Pretty sure we read this, but I'm trying to figure out the way he put it. Okay, this is how he put it. But it is more than 10 years since Henry Jekyll became too fanciful for me. And he called it unscientific balderdash. So whatever it is that's separating Lanyon from Jekyll has to do with science. And according to Lanyon, Dr. Jekyll is doing scientific things like Frankenstein. Remember Frankenstein, he was involved with creating life. That's not the purpose of, and it's not possible either, but that's not the purpose of science. Can I tell you something about science? I like science. Wasn't very good at it, but I respect science. Don't know what particular school system this is, but many school systems, the teachers' union of those school systems are refusing to go back. They want every teacher in the school system, and these are big systems, so there are thousands of teachers. They're not going to go back until everybody has been inoculated, has the vaccine. And they may even say that about the students, I don't know. the CDC says, Ryan, that that's not necessary. The CDC, i.e. science, the people that represent science say that you don't need to wait for everybody to be inoculated, you're good to go back. So the teachers union are defying science. And we hear all the time, let's just follow the science. Let's do what science dictates. Here's an example where, but not in this case. And I think reading books like Frankenstein and Dr. Jekyll remind us that, well, really, raw science isn't about, it's about looking at data and drawing conclusions about things that you can see, smell, taste, in other words, experimentation. And I know science goes a lot, there's different realms of aspects of science, but that's kind of what this book is about. He was involved with something scientific that he shouldn't have been. And anyway, that's kind of where we are. So we're on the top of 18. Jackson, would you begin reading? He meets Mr. Hyde.
What page are we on again?
18.
Dolores stood a while when Mr. Hyde had left her. The picture of disquietude.
Disquietude.
Then he began slowly to mount the street, pausing every step or two and putting his hand to his brow, like a man in mental perplexity. The problem he was thus debating as he walked was one of a class that is rarely solved.
Okay, at this point, he's going to go through a series of adjectives that describe Mr. Hyde. Question number 6, I want you to write those down. I wrote them down. I circled them in the book, but also wrote them down. I want you to know he spends a lot of time describing Mr. Hyde. And it's odd because it's none of it, with one exception, he's short, he's small. But oddly enough, that changes. We'll understand. Guys, could y'all listen to me? Let's just save that till about lunch. All right, so keep reading.
Mr. Hyde was pale and dwarfish. He gave an impression of deformity without any nameable malformation. He had a displeasing smell. He had poured himself to the water with a sort of murderous mixture of timidity and fullness, and he spoke with a husky, whispering and somewhat broken voice. All of these were points against him, but not all of these together could explain the unknown disgust, loathing and fear with which Mr. Utterson regarded them. There must be something else, said the perplexed gentleman. There is something more, if I could find a name for it. God bless me, the man seems hardly human. Something drolditic, shall we say? Or can it be the old story of Dr. Fell? Or is it the mere radius of a foul soul that thus transpires through and transfigures its clay content? The last thing I think for, oh my poor old Harry Jekyll, if ever I read Satan's signature upon a face, it is on that of your name friend.
All right, so here's some of the words you should have written down. These are words that describe Mr. Hyde. I wrote down pale, dwarfish, and then in quotes, I copied displeasing, smile, troglodytic, write it down, we'll talk what it means in a minute. Hardly human, foul soul, Satan's signature, husky, whispering, broken voice. Most of those, although some of them are not physical, like he's pale. That's physical. He's short. That's physical. Displeasing smile. That's more about what's on the inside. Troglodytic. It means caveman. I mean, it refers to early man. I just don't like that description because I think early man were cavemen. We still have cavemen today. People, you talk about people who live in caves. But anyway, that's the idea. He's a troglodyte. He's one of these early men. If you believed in the evolution theory, it's one of those early creatures. And he's just something about. These are all very abstract. he has a foul soul. You can't see the soul. He's hardly human. What does that mean? And he says you can see on his face the work of Satan. All right? All right, Tucker, pick it up from there.
Around the corner from the by street, there was a square of
Gotcha.
ancient houses, now for the most part decayed from their high estate and led in flats and chambers to all sorts of conditions of them. Knife engravers, architects, shady lawyers, and the agents of obscure enterprises. One house, however, safe from the corner, was still occupied entirely. At the door of this, which bore a great air of wealth and comfort, where it was now plunged in darkness except for the family, Mr. Utterson stopped and the well-dressed, elderly servant opened the door. "Is Dr. Jekyll at home, Poole?" asked the lawyer. "I will see Mr. Utterson," said Poole, admitting the visitor as he spoke into a large, elaborate, comfortable hall paved with flags, warmed by a bright open fire, and furnished with costly cabinets and spoke. "Will you wait here by the fire, sir, or should I give you a light?"
Yeah.
Here, thank you, said the lawyer, and he drew near and leaned upon the tall fender. This hall in which he was now left blends a pet fancy of his friend, the doctor's, and Utterson himself was wont to speak of it as the pleasantest room in London. But tonight there was a shudder in his blood. The face of Hyde sat heavy on his brain, and he felt there was a rare with him a nausea and distaste of life, and in the gloom of his spirits he seemed to read a glimpse of the flickering of the twilight on the polished cabinet, and uneasy, starting of a shadow on the roof. He was ashamed of his relief when Poole presently returned to announce that Dr. was gone home.
So we still haven't met Dr. Jekyll. We've heard about him, we've met Mr. Hyde, we've met all the principal actors in the story, but we still hadn't met Dr. Jekyll, so, and, you know, his name does come first in the title, so he's pretty important. So he's there with Poole. Poole is his servant, his butler, and so Utterson has a conversation with Poole about Mr. Hyde. Go ahead.
"I saw Mr. Hyde go in by the old dissecting room door. He said, 'Is that right when Dr. Jekyll is from home?' 'Quite right, Mr. Utterson, sir,' replied the servant. 'Mr. Hyde has a key. Your master seems to repose a great deal of trust in that young man, Poole,' resumed the other musingly. 'Yes, sir, he does indeed,' said Poole. We have all orders to obey him.' 'I do not think I ever met Mr. Hyde,' asked Utterson. 'Oh dear, no, sir, he never dines here,' replied the butler. 'Indeed, we see very little of him on this side of the house. He mostly comes and goes by the laboratory.' 'Well, good night, Poole. Good night, Mr. Utterson.'"
When he says, "I don't think I ever met Mr. Hyde here," he just met him, right? Remember, he just saw him, and so he went from Hyde over here. But that's not what he means. I've never seen him here, is what he's saying. I've never seen him in the house. If he lives here, and has a key, you'd think at some point I would have seen him. And notice what he says. He never dines here. You notice, Hyde just went in the house, and Dr. Jekyll's not there. Seems to be a pattern. Whenever Hyde's around, no Jekyll. How about it?
And the lawyer sat up and worked with a very heavy heart. Poor Harry Jekyll, he thought, my mind misgives me, he is in deep waters. He was wild when he was young, a long while ago to be sure, but in the law of God there is no statute of limitations. It must be that, the ghost of some old sin, the cancer of some concealed disgrace, punishment coming petty follow. Years after the memory power is forgotten, and self-love coming down to the fault. And the lawyer, scared by the thought, brooded a while on his own past, groping in all the corners of his memory, lest by some jack in the box of an old
Iniquity.
should leap to the light there. His past was fairly blameless. Few men could read the rules of their life with less apprehension. Yet he was humbled to the dust by the many ill things he had done, and raised up again into a sober and fearful gratitude by the many he had come so near to doing, yet avoided. And then by a return on his former subject, he conceived a spark of hope. His master Hyde, if he were studied, thought he, must have secrets of his own, black secrets, by the look of him
look, there are a couple of things there. There are questions for it, but you need to know it. If Jekyll is being blackmailed, that means, and he even notes, Utterson notes that, well, Jekyll was wild when he was young. He must have done something when he was young that this guy is blackmailing him for. You know, and then he started thinking about, is there a statute of limitations on those things? In other words, think about they said that with public office, that if you've ever done anything in your life, of course now most of it's on internet, you know, get people to take pictures of it, and you know, maybe it's 20 years ago and you're trying to run for public office, people will find it and use it against you, because things you did years ago are now affecting what happens today. You've seen that just recently, some things, in the woman that was in The Bachelor, you know, she was in some sort of party, you know what I'm talking about? Did you hear this story? She was one of the contestants, I think it was in The Bachelor, just this current season, and they discovered several years ago. Now, it wasn't last week or anything, I don't know how, I mean, these are 20-year-olds, right, or mid-20s or older, so maybe when she was in college, she had gone to a party, and the party was simply wearing dresses like maybe women would have worn in the Civil War. You know, like it was, they called it an antebellum party, pre-war party. And so that began to be, you know, that's like an offense to do that. And the guy that hosts the show, well, you know, I'm sorry she did it, but, you know, it's over, she shouldn't have. He didn't say anything. He didn't say he favored her or anything. He just kind of didn't come out strong enough. Well, they fired him. They fired the guy who was in charge of it. I've never seen the show, so I'm glad you haven't either. But they fired him because he didn't come out strong enough. So the governor of Virginia, he got away with it, but the governor of Virginia went to a similar party when he was in college, and it was a really racially toned thing, and pictures show up, and he got in trouble for it, but unlike some people, he managed to keep his job. He's still the governor of Virginia. So what Utterson is saying, Jekyll must have done something like that prior to the internet, prior to cameras, well, there are cameras, but prior to video. He must have done something that he's being blackmailed for. And you know, there aren't any statutes of limitations, right? If it was 20 years ago, it doesn't matter. If it's 21, does it matter? No, it doesn't. Nowadays, no matter how old you were when you did it, if they can find that you did it and they want to hurt you, they'll try to. And that's why, please don't put anything on, you know, don't take pictures on the internet, because it'll eventually come back, whatever it is. Even if it seems pretty, of course you're going to put a picture on the internet, but just be very, very careful, because those things don't die, and you never know when somebody wants to hurt you. Just think that's kind of what he's talking about here. That's that situation. And then he starts thinking about himself. He's thinking, well, what did I do when I was young? Because all this is about something Jekyll did when he was young. He thinks that what's going on is the blackmail thing. We're not sure if that's actually it. But he's saying, none of us are perfect, so somebody's going to eventually find something that you did and try to use it against you. But then he starts thinking, well, maybe Hyde's done something. So maybe I can go approach it that way. I'm going to find out more about Mr. Hyde, and I'll try to blackmail him. Anyway, that's where we are. It's really character versus reputation. It's kind of the situation. All right, so he finally meets Dr. Jekyll. So we had Lillian.
A fortnight later, by excellent good fortune, the doctor gave one of the pleasant dinners to some 5 or 6 old brown youths, all intelligent, reputable men, and all judges of good wine, and Mr. Utterson so contrived that he remained behind after the others had departed. This is no new arrangement, but a thing that had befallen many scores of time. Where Utterson was liked, he was liked well. Host loved to detain the dry lawyer, while the light-hearted and loose tongue had already their foot on the threshold. They liked to sit a while in their unobtrusive company, practicing for solitude, sobering their minds in the man's
so we finally meet Dr. Jekyll. Look on page 21. It says he's about 50. It's a large man. There's a reason I keep pointing that out, that Jekyll is large, or that Hyde is not. You'll find out later. He's about 50 years old. He has a sly Castor's appearance. Sly, you know, when you're sly, what are you?
Sneaky.
Sneaky. There's something sneaky about the guy. You know, he's hiding something. I think that was interesting. But he seemed like a pretty nice guy. All right? So this is after the party, and here's a chance for Jekyll to ask about Hyde. So Ben.
I have been wanting to speak to you, Jekyll, begins the letter. You know that will of yours. A close observer might have gathered that the topic was distasteful, but the doctor carried it off gaily. My poor Utterson, said he, you're unfortunate in such a client. I had never saw a man so distressed as you were by my will, unless it were that hidebound headed Lanyon at what he called my scientific heresies. Oh, I know he's a good fellow. You need it from an excellent fellow, and I always mean to see more of him. But a hidebound pedant for all that, and ignorant, blatant pedant. I was never more disappointed in any man than Lanyon.
All right, look at number 7. So they talk about Lanyon first, but they get to Hyde. And he says of Lanyon, he's a pedant, and he's a hidebound pedant. By the way, the man's name is Mr. Hyde. What does that word mean, Hyde? Spelled H-I-D-E, it means what? What does it mean? It doesn't. It's not spelled H-I-D-E, but if it were, what does it mean? If you hide from something,
Scared.
yeah, you're
Frightened.
yes, you're trying to keep away from being seen. But it's not H-I-D-E, H-Y-D-E.
But it's
What is the other meaning of hide? Can you think of another completely different from?
Like an animal skin.
Yes. But why would that be significant?
Because
His name is Mr. Hyde. Clearly, he's hiding something. But yes,
He's trying to be disguised.
yes. But what we said, it means animal skin. What does that mean? Why is that significant?
Because whatever is described is not really described as a fully human person.
Right.
Uh,
That's right, because he's not fully human. Now, of course you're fully human. You're only human or you're not human. But we're talking about the way that you act is not human-like. So why don't we go to Jameson?
You know, I never approved of it, pursued Utterson, recklessly disregarding the brush topic.
Okay, they're talking about the guy Hyde who's on the will, and he never liked it because he didn't know who it was. And so he disapproved of giving it to somebody that, well, not that it's his business, but that's what he thought, yeah.
My will, yes, certainly, I know that, said the doctor, a trifle sharply. You've told me so. Well, I tell you so again, continued the lawyer. I have been learning something of young Hyde. The large, handsome face of Dr. Jekyll grew pale to the very lips, and there came a blackness about his eyes. I do not care to hear more, said he. This is a matter I thought we had agreed to drop. What I heard was abominable, said Utterson. It can make no change. You do not understand my position, returned the doctor with a certain incoherency of manner. I am painfully situated, Utterson. My position is a very strange one. It is one of those affairs that cannot be mended by talking. Jekyll, said Utterson, you know me. I'm a man to be trusted. Make a clean breast of this in confidence, and I make no doubt I can get you of it. My good Utterson, said the doctor, this is very good of you. This is downright good of you, and I cannot find words to thank you in. I believe you wholly. I would not trust you before any man alive, before myself, if I can make the choice, but indeed it isn't what you fancy. It is not as bad as that, and just to your good heart at rest, I will tell you one thing. The moment I choose, I can be rid of Mr. Hyde. I give you my hand upon that. And I thank you again and again, and I will just add one little word, Utterson, that I'm sure you'll take in good part. This is a private matter, and I beg of you to let it sleep. Utterson reflected a little, looking in the fire. I have no doubt you are perfectly right, he said at last, getting to his feet. Well, but since we had touched upon this business, and for the last time I hope, continued the doctor, there is one point I should like you to understand. I've really a very great interest in poor Hyde. I know you have seen him, he told me so, and I fear he was rude, but I do sincerely take a very great interest in that young man. And if I'm taken away Utterson, I wish you to promise me that you will bear with him and get his rights for him. I think you would if you knew all, and it would be a weight off my mind if you would promise. I can pretend that I shall never like him, said the lawyer. I don't ask that, pleaded Jekyll, laying his hand upon the other arm. I only ask for justice. I only ask you to help him for my sake when I am no longer here. Utterson heaved an irrepressible sigh. Well said he, I promise.
I look at 7. A pedant is someone who is usually refers to a teacher, in this case a doctor, who is very strict about unimportant things. You know, like it'd be the petty rules that would make someone a pedant. They're very strict and stickler for these things, but they're, by other people's opinion, they're not important. You know, you're majoring on the minor things. That's what he says about Lanyon. And then what seems to be Jekyll's opinion of Hyde here. He doesn't say he likes him. He doesn't tell him anything about it. He says things like, I have a really great interest in poor Hyde. He calls him poor. And later he says, I have a very great interest in that young man. And he goes to a lot of trouble to say, if something should happen to me, I would hope you would help him get his rights. Nothing about what kind of person he is. It's just very vague, very general.
He feels bad for him.
What?
He feels bad for him.
Yeah, but he doesn't tell us why. So he says, I'm interested in him. Very vague. And could you make sure he gets his rights if something should happen to me? I mean, if someone's made a will out, they know they're gonna die. You haven't made one out, but someday you will. You're gonna wait until it's a little bit later, so you don't make one out. But he's 50 years old. I guess that makes sense that he would have made a will out. And he says, I just want him to get justice. All those are things that you can say about number 8. And number 9, well, how does Jekyll try to put Utterson at peace about this guy? You don't have to worry about it because, and it's not so much about Hyde, it's about Jekyll's relationship to Hyde. What does Utterson say? I mean, what does Jekyll say about Hyde? I'll read it to you. I will tell you one thing. The moment I choose, I can be rid of Mr. Hyde. Now, you should be writing this down. I mean, you're not gonna be able to study something you never heard of the first time. He says, I can get rid of him. So it's not what you think. It's not about blackmailing, because that's what he thinks. He doesn't have anything on me. I can get rid of him anytime I want to. He's not controlling me. And that's what Utterson feels, and that's going on. Is that somehow Hyde has got something on you, he's controlling you. He says, no, he's not. I can get rid of him anytime I want to, with no harm.
Hypothetically, if he was blackmailing him, wouldn't that be what he would say if he was being blackmailed? Because he can't tell me.
Yeah, you're right. That's really vague. He couldn't say anything one way or the other. Very, very, very good. All right, Ryan, this is a murder case involving Mr. Hyde.
Nearly a year later, in the month of October 18, London was startled by a crime of singular ferocity and rendered all the more notable by the high position of the victim. The details are few and startling. The nature living alone in a house not far from the river. After
Keep going, just finish that paragraph.
Vanishing the cane, carrying on as the maid described it like a madman. The old gentleman took a step back with the air of wondering and surprise and a trifle hurt. And at that Mr. Hyde broke out of all bounds and clubbed him to the earth. The next moment with ape-like fury, he was trampling his victim underfoot, hailing down a storm of blows under which the bones were utterly shattered, and the body jumped upon the roadway at the horror of these sights and sounds. The maid fainted.
All right, at the end of this, hang on, at the end of this paragraph, a woman sees Hyde murder, he happens to be a member of parliament, like a congressman, out in front of, under a light post, he just beats him to death. The vocabulary through Monday, and we will continue reading tomorrow, I wanna get into this.
What? I was reading along.
At the beginning, I wasn't really towards the end.
Is that yours down there? I'll get it.
I think this might be Robbie, because it's on carrying a lot of it.
Good.
Yeah. If you want.
Thank you. Yeah, see you later.